call the Fourth Osage Nation Congress to order. It's the SHIZO session, it's day 9 of the SHIZO session, September 17th, 2015. It's 10:01 a.m. First item on the agenda is prayer. Congressman Mason, could I ask you please to lead us in a word of prayer?
Thank you. Almighty Father God, we come this day. Again, we say thank you for the breath of life that you've given us. We thank you for the breath of life that you've given us to our people, Almighty Father. We ask for your divine guidance this day and throughout this day as we ponder and we discuss the matters at hand for the advancement of our nation and our people, and care of them, Almighty Father, wherever they may be, whatever circumstance they may be in, Almighty Father. We ask that you be with them, and we come and we humbly ask that you be within us and guide us in our thoughts and our words and our deeds here in this place for our people. In the name of your Son, Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Congressman Mason. Roll call, please.
Congresswoman Bucklehead. Congresswoman Edwards. Congressman Hamilton.
Present.
Congressman Yak.
Here.
Congressman Maker.
Here.
Congressman Mason.
Present.
Congressman Norris.
Here.
Congresswoman Pratt. Present. Congressman Shaw.
Here.
Congressman Supernall.
Here.
Congressman Walker.
Here.
Speaker Whitehorn.
Here.
Assistant Chief Redcorn.
Present.
We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of journal. Congressman, you have
Motion to approve the journal as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. There's some discussion here, Congressman Mason.
Yes, I know that Congresswoman Edwards has been not present because of some personal matters, but was she present on the 15th? Was she here?
Yes, she was in session this day. Remember, we skipped a day and didn't convene yesterday.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Motion and second. Any more discussion to the journal approval? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the September 15th journal is approved. Next item on the agenda is reports of select committees. Are there any select committees to report? Congressman Jack, do you have some committee reports?
Standing committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Reports of standing committees then. Congressman Yak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Congress. Reporting out bill number, Appropriation Committee met on bill number ONCA 1594, an act to amend and restate the Business Commission and Advisory Boards Act 15 ONCA 15-101, creating a new board category for the Health Authority Board and to establish an alternate effective date, sponsored by Congressman Shaw. I believe the date of the meeting was the 14th, 14th and the 17th, 2015. Committee action was do pass as a committee substitute, voting yes for Yak, Supernall, Pratt, Shaw, Mason, absent Edwards. met on Bill Resolution ONCR 1521, resolution to set the compensation and reimbursement allowance for the boards and commissions of the Osage Nation for fiscal year 2016 and 2017, sponsored by Congressman Shaw, dated the meeting was the 15th and 17th of September. Committee action was do pass, voting yes were Yek, Shaw, Supernoff, Pratt, Mason. Absent was Edwards. Committee met September 16th concerning the FY 2016 spending. The committee made a recommendation. The Appropriations Committee recommends no additional appropriations be made for the health benefit plan during this session. The master campus loan payment to be kept to the minimum required for the fiscal year 2016. Additional reductions in tribal funding be made in new spending and to hold tribal spending in accordance with projected revenue of $43,775,000. Voting yes were Yek, Pratt, Mason, Shaw, Supernoff. Absent was Edwards.
Thank you, Congressman. Does everybody have a copy of the committee, that committee report before you? With the committee recommendation for the FY16 spending? No? It's pretty juicy, so I like it. I will make sure that they get emailed to every member. So be looking for them in this recommendation in your email. Or we can take a break and have some copies made and distributed right now, but it's just a recommendation. We don't have to take a vote on it. So I'll get it to you. ONCA 1594 and ONCR 1521 are referred to general order if there are no objections to that. Next item on the agenda is introduction of bills and resolutions. Are there any bills or resolutions to be introduced today? Seeing none, we are now on bills and resolutions on first reading. The first one under heading is Congresswoman Edwards, ONCA 1598. Congresswoman Pratt.
Morning, Speaker, members of Congress, at the request of Congresswoman Edwards, I'll be reading in ONCA 1598, an act to amend Section 2-301 and 2-311 of Title 15 to remove the definitions and to expand the duties of the Department of the Treasury and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Congressman Bucklow.
Reading in ONCA 1599, an act to amend 26 ONC at Sec 4-114 of the Osage Nation Revenue and Taxation Act of 2006 as amended, to only require one person named on the title to have a valid driver's license when registering a vehicle and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm reading in ONCA 15100, an act to amend 19 ONC Section 3-104 of the Osage Nation Workforce Pay for Performance Act to replace language unintentionally deleted by previous amendment and to establish an alternate effective date. Congressman Norris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of Congress. I'm reading in ONCR 1519, a resolution to approve the Osage Nation Election Board rules and regulations governing elections in accordance with the Osage Nation Election Code.
Thank you, Congressman. Congressman Buffalo.
ONC ONCR 1526, a resolution to express support for the language immersion program initiated by the Osage Nation to acknowledge the importance of language immersion programs to the future of our children.
Thank you, Congresswoman. ONCA 1598, ONCA 1599, ONCA 15100, ONCR 1519 are referred to the Governmental Operations Committee, and ONCR 1526 is referred to the Cultural Committee. We are now on bills and resolutions on general order. General order day 1, the legislation is read in by the sponsor, Congressman Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of Congress, I'd like to read in ONCA 1590, an act to amend ONCA 12-107 to require unexpended monies appropriated for specific capital projects to revert back to the Treasury and to add reporting requirements and to establish an alternate effective date.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Pratt.
Thank you. ONCR 1524, a resolution commending Herman Mugry Lookout for his leadership, dedication, and service to the Osage people and the Osage Nation in preserving and passing on our language and directing distribution. Also, ONCR 1525, a resolution to adopt and approve the Osage orthography developed by Herman Mugry Lookout and refined by the Osage Nation Language Department.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We're now on General Order Day 2, when amendments may be proposed. The only bill we have under that heading today is ONCA 1575, an act to protect human remains, funerary objects, graves, and cemeteries, and to establish an alternate effective day. Are there any amendments to be proposed to that bill? Seeing none, ONCA 1575 is referred to engrossment. We're now on motions and notices. Are there any motions or notices today? Congresswoman Buffalohead.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to take a 5-minute recess to print the information that came out of GovOps yesterday morning, and for us to at least look at it and then possibly adopt.
What?
Was it appropriations?
What I got up there.
It was? I'll wait.
Well, okay. Congressman Shaw.
I'd like to make a motion for a brief recess to print and distribute copies of the Appropriation Committee's recommendations. I plan a motion that will be aided by every member of Congress having a copy in front of them.
Yes, sir.
Was it
Second.
Not yet. It hasn't. We have a second to the motion. Is there any more discussion to the motion for a brief recess for printing? All in favor of the motion say yes.
Yes.
We're in a brief recess for printing copies. We're back in order, and we are in motions and notices. We had a copy made of the appropriations recommendation from yesterday's meeting on FY16 appropriations, and you all have been presented it. Congressman Shaw.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make the motion that the Osage Nation Congress accept the recommendation from the Appropriations Committee as presented to us earlier, and as we now have a written copy of in front of us.
Second.
The motion is second. Is there any discussion to that motion? Congresswoman Buffalohead.
This is something that I think we need to adopt. We select these individuals that sit on appropriation based off of all of our other committees. They look at the numbers, that's their job. And I have always, for the last 5 years, taken a lot of thought into what they have decided, because they're helping us to make big decisions and they're talking about things that we all have been talking about for the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks that we've had budgets, and they're acting on that. They're listening, they're coming from other committees, and their opinion carries a lot of weight with me. So I'm going to be in favor of this.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Any other discussion? Congressman Walker?
Well, I agree with that. Their recommendations, from what I recall and remember, are almost I don't want to say demand, but it sets the course, and that's what it should be. By rule, that's one of the things the Appropriations Committee is tasked with. I like the portion about holding tribal spending to a certain amount. I think including the master campus plan loan payment and the health benefit plan payment or an additional appropriation, I think that is going a little bit too far, especially with the possibilities of additional funding coming from gaming and by way of distribution. We don't know what that's going to be. I'm in favor of the amount, but I think including the master campus plan loan payment and the health benefit plan portion of it, I think that's going a little bit too far, and it really puts an anchor around those bills' neck when they're even considered in committee, and they've not made it that far yet. They've not even been considered in committee because there are other pending issues. I'll just say that. I'm going to vote no.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Beto, go ahead.
I don't think that I think that it sets the foundation for where we're going. I think you have some very valid points, and my solution to that is, in the event that we don't know how much money is coming in, or additional, rather, we can always come back into a special session. That's our option, and certainly something that we've done in the past. So for right now, what we have, what we know we have to work within that. That's all I have to say.
Congressman Yak.
I see Congressman Walker's concerns, but it does just address the health benefit plan during this session. So in my way I look at it, we could revisit that in a special session. There's additional funding that becomes available, and if we do get additional distribution from gaming, then the appropriations could make another recommendation that we do apply more of that toward the payment of the campus master plan. And it's just in my opinions, but I think we need to do something, and this was a good recommendation by Congressman Shaw, so I will support it.
Thank you, Congressman. Any more discussion? Congressman Walker?
One last comment. There have been some different scenarios discussed. Our budget analyst has been crunching numbers daily, and as he left the door yesterday, one of the scenarios that has been considered or discussed put us well in the black. And this recommendation from appropriations was made prior to a consideration of the scenario that was discussed and expressed yesterday by the budget analyst. So, and I thought it was a good suggestion, and that doesn't necessarily consider this recommendation. So again, I'll be voting no for that reason also.
Congressman Shaw?
I'm aware that the executive branch is working on one or more of their budgets, looking at possible reductions in tribal funding requests. We've not seen that yet, but yet we have budgets scheduled to be discussed in committee every day, including later today. I don't believe we can wait around to see what's going to happen, and that we need to move forward. Based on the information that we had available today, that was hard numbers received in the congressional office, that instituting these particular measures would leave us, and this is after discussion with the budget analyst this morning, around $500,000 that we would need to make up with cuts as recommended within new spending. And so it gives us a target. Things could change, I realize that. Executive may come over with some changes. There may be a TDLA shortfall that needs to be covered. But today, we need to make sure that we have a plan. And we've heard that again. We're almost at the end of our second week, and there's not really been a roadmap. Everyone wants a roadmap, but it's so big and hard to handle that it's difficult to decide how to proceed. This was simply a way to give us a roadmap to get there. And I like the idea of having a target of $500,000 that I need to make up with somehow, doing my small part on budget committees to try to get there. There are others on this Congress that are in other committees that have perhaps larger increases in travel funding, but it gives you a target. That target may change, but the notion that we might get $6 million, to me, all that does is confound your thinking when you're trying to determine what to cut. We don't have it, and just like Congresswoman Buffalo had said, we have to work with what we got now. We don't know if we'll get that for sure or when it'll come. And if we get that later, after session, or at the tail end of session, all I would say about that is we have lots of possibilities then.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Buffalo.
Agreed. And what I'm hearing is well, we were, the beginning of session looking at some point, beginning of session, we were okay. Then we were not okay. There's different views on whether we have money or if we spend it all for over projected revenue. I will say this, and I've always said there's a little bit of logic in both sides of the story. We're pretty close to spending every dime we have. What's wrong with saving, if we have a little extra money, do we have to spend every dime we have? I don't operate my own finances that way, and I don't want to operate the nation's finances that way. I want to have a little something in there so that if something comes down the road, like, I don't know, a lawsuit, we seem to be in those all the time. We have some money. So I'm okay with making some cuts right now, and if we get additional appropriation, great. I'm sure someone will find a way to spend it up real fast, but I'm in favor of saving some also. So I'll be supporting this.
Congressman Supernaw and
Well, I'm going to be supporting this, and I urge the rest of you to support it. If you'd sit through that committee meeting, which I think most everybody did, there's good reasons to pass this. And like has been expressed here, this notion of spending everything you get your hands on so that we can borrow more money, and betting on them to come, I don't agree with it. I think we need to pass this, put some restraint on ourselves, and provide a little cushion for the future.
Congressman Walker, did I see your hand?
Well, I was asked a question, I felt like I was asked a question by Congresswoman Buffalohead. I think she was directing it at me. Do I not think that we should save some? Yes, I do. That's my comments. Did they lead members to believe that I don't think that we should, or did I lead you to believe that we need to spend everything? That's not what I meant. If that's the way it came across, that's not what I was insinuating. I just think there's other scenarios out there that need to be considered, and I understand the Appropriations Committee can reconvene and make a new recommendations. Anyway, I'll withhold any further comments.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to remind Congress that we're voting to adopt a recommendation that in no way stops legislation from moving forward. It just makes a very loud statement from the Appropriations Committee, and Congress, if it gets adopted, would agree that we think these measures are going to be cost-saving measures to follow and to look at. There's no further discussion. Let's do a roll call vote on this.
Congressman Hamilton,
Yes.
Congressman Yeck,
Yes.
Congressman Maker,
Yes.
Congressman Mason,
Yes.
Congressman Norris,
Yes.
Congresswoman Pratt,
Yes.
Congressman Shaw,
Yes.
Congressman Supernaw,
Yes.
Congressman Walker,
Yes.
Congresswoman Buffalo Head,
Yes.
Speaker Whitehorn.
Yes, motion passes. We are still in motions and notices. Are there any? Congresswoman Pratt?
I move to go into the committee of the whole to possibly discuss the hovering issue of the raises throughout all the budgets and the additional distribution from gaming.
Second.
The motion and a second to go into committee of the whole to discuss the raise situation we're seeing in budgets and possible extra distribution. And any discussion to the motion? Congresswoman Pratt?
Reason being, I think Congressman Supernaw said that most everyone was in appropriations, and I know that most everyone wasn't. So I think that if you're not on, if you haven't attended appropriations meetings and, or you're not, I've sat through all the committee meetings, and it is a hovering cloud of what we're going to do. And I know there's a lot of discussion over here, here, and here, but I think everybody needs to make sure that we're all aware and moving towards coming to a decision, because there is a lot of work to do. If we're not going to go across the board, then there is an enormous amount of work to do on the budgets, if it's going to be piecemealed or what. But we're just going through because they're all attached to the one bill. We're just kind of moving through, and the first two questions we ask in every committee meeting is, are there any new positions and are there any raises? And they're all throughout. And so we're just like, we ask that, but then, okay, and then we go on to the next one. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. And, you know, a couple of people mentioned looking at their options, then that's an option that needs to be discussed. That's my reason.
Thank you, Congresswoman. All in favor of the motion to go into committee of the whole, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we are in committee of the whole for discussion of these issues. Congresswoman Buffalo Head.
Well, I'm glad that we are going to discuss this. Here's the scenario from my angle. I've had some departments tell me they were told no raises. Some departments were told no raises, but they put them in there anyways. Some departments have told us they've gone through HR. HR has told us some departments did and some departments didn't. You look at the bottom of the budget and everyone signed off on it. These are, these are just the facts. This is what we've heard. It's all a matter of public record. Executive can back the recording up and listen to it all they want. This is the facts. Some people went through HR, some people didn't. Some departments were told no, some departments were told yes. It's like a paint gun that's splattered across the wall. And there's no rhyme or reason. And I don't operate like that. I just don't operate like that. So if there's structure and it's organized and we're getting that communication from executive, these are the departments you're going to see with raises. And these departments you won't, and here's why, and yes, they went through HR, and then HR confirms, yes, we're aware, and it's within the salary grade, and there was a rhyme or reason, great, but this is not the case, so we have to make a decision what we're gonna do.
Congressman Supernaw.
Well, I agree with Congresswoman Buffalo Head. Yesterday, I asked for a meeting with HR.
Congressman Supernaw, it's really hard for me to hear you. Can you speak up just a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I talk louder.
Thank you.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
What was I saying? No.
Start all over.
I met with, asked HR to come over because I was confused as to how they approach these raises and how they were justified, because I wanted to use that knowledge in our committees that we, well, it turned out, it appeared to me that there's just no rhyme or reason to some of these raises that come up. Some were just arbitrary. And I realized our merit system at this point is pretty chaotic. But what I got out of it was that if it got the proper signatures and came to HR, they were going to sign those raises, whether there was any rhyme or reason to it or not, if the money's there. They just kept repeating that. If the money's there, we're going to give it. So it's up to us to determine whether that money's going to be there or not. And my recommendation is that we freeze the wages at last year's rates, and approach it not piecemeal, budget to budget, but adjust the divisional budgets in one amendment.
Congresswoman Buckles.
If the money is there. So is that a race to the podium? If you're the first 25 people in line, the money's there, you get your raise, and the 150 that show up after that, if there's nobody there, they don't? What? I don't know what to say about that. That's no way for employee morale to be good. I don't agree with that, if the money's there.
I'd like to speak to that because I was in on the tail end of that meeting, and that was the director of HR telling us their protocol, because they don't get to say who gets the raise. They were pretty much giving their protocol that it had to have 5 signatures, and one of those signatures was from the accounting department, that it has been verified that the money is in that line. And then when all those signatures are there and they review it, then that change is made. So you're right, if the money's there, but he was basically telling us how the process worked. And that was one of the components of the process, is that they verified that there's money in the line.
Okay.
So I just wanted to be
That gives me a little bit more comfort.
a little bit more clarity,
Not
but it's
much,
still,
but it does a little.
yes, I understand, Congressman Walker.
Well, I did attend the Appropriations Committee meeting yesterday, and there were other scenarios that were discussed regarding potential ways to move forward as far as appropriating funds to the division. That also included discussion about a potential amendment to the Budget Parameters Act, which would give the executive branch more flexibility to spend the money, not just if it's in wages, it's frozen. That amendment would allow them to move it to potential direct services or other less desirable scenarios that were brought out. But as far as making a motion or freezing raises, that's not really what I've heard. I wonder if that's even outside of our ability. Now, a scenario was discussed in appropriation as far as appropriating the same as last year's levels in salaries and wages. But even at last year's levels, they were appropriated a certain amount of funding, and they were based on certain rates of pay. And I think the number I heard was 158 raises were given last year, even though we established a certain rate, at least we thought was a certain rate of pay. So they still have the ability to give raises as long as the money's there. Well, the money's going to be there because within a division, there are multiple employees or positions where they're not staffed. So money's going to build up in salaries, wages, and fringe. So they have the ability to give those raises if the money's there like that. So I just think we all need to be aware. we can hold salaries and wages and fringe to the same levels as last year, but they still have the ability to give raises.
And they should. That's the executive's job. It's our job to decide how much money goes into that line. So I agree. That's their job to give the raises. We don't do that, but we say how much is in that line.
Right.
And if we want it the same level as FY15, then that would be within this body's ability to do that. Not to say who gets them and who doesn't. That's the executive's job.
Agree.
Congresswoman Pratt.
Well, you kind of, I guess, spoke to my comment. I was gonna say, well, that doesn't mean we still have to give them even more, to raise it even more if they have that ability. This is just giving them more, so.
Is that what I said?
You said they still have the ability to give the raises, because the money's already there from positions that weren't filled last year and blah, whatever. So this, we would just be giving them even more. I mean, we do have the ability to stop it at a certain level.
Congressman Walker.
Oh, that was,
Well, I agreed with that. As what I was saying is, we could appropriate the same level that we did last year, and they would still have the ability to give raises. I'm not in any way saying that we should give what they're asking for. That's not what I said. I supported, in fact, I think I may have even brought that up
you said putting a freeze on it
yesterday.
is out of our ability. You said that first, and then
Freezing
you said.
raises.
Okay, I'm done.
Congressman Maker.
My comment is, just, simple economics here. If we don't have the money, and from what I've heard, we don't have it. I've heard the treasury's at the lowest point it's ever been, and we don't have any extra substantial revenue coming in other than what we have now is gaming. And if we don't feed that golden goose, we're going to stay just like we are. And we have all these new initiatives from executive in health. We have the compacting that's going on right now. That's going to go even higher, in my opinion, in the future. And these education, that's going to go up higher every year. And I don't see any new revenue coming in other than what we have now, what we get from the tax commission and gaming. So unless there's something I don't know about in revenue, we're going to have to start cutting back somewhere.
Thank you, Congressman. Assistant Chief Rayford.
Let me start by saying the executive branch is not perfect.
What?
He said, you heard him. He said that he's not perfect. He just wants to hear it again.
He said he's not perfect.
I will leave it to Congress to decide whether they're perfect. I will leave it to Congress to decide whether they gave their own employees any raises in the past year or in the upcoming budget. Your own budget analyst informed the Congress that every single division, other than education, received cuts in overall budget, and the list I saw all had hundreds of thousands of dollars of cuts in every division. I'm not here to try to change anybody's mind, but human nature being what it is, if we make those kinds of cuts, and we initiate the kinds of savings that this administration has initiated, and we make things more efficient overall, and we reallocate part of that to raises, and the Congress says, well, thank you for making all those cuts, thank you for taking the initiative that no prior administration has taken, but we want more. We want more of this money left over, then that is this Congress's prerogative. But I'm here to tell you it's going to be up to the Congress to do it, if that's what this Congress wishes to do. I think, being from over there, this administration has done a really, really good job of saving a lot of money and trying to put it in places that really matter. like early childhood education. I think we're entitled to that opinion, and I think our actions bear that out. To the question of how much money is left, it's been alluded to here several times this morning. I'm here to inform the Congress. I've already informed some of them informally, either that the $1.3 million WIA budget has been slashed by about, these are very round numbers, don't hold me to 10,000 either way. In round numbers, about $650,000. And we would like to see $250,000 or $260,000 of that go over to take care of TBLA's shortfall in tribal dollars. Our numbers indicate, as soon as we resubmit these budgets, if Congress passes them as we've submitted them, that there's a $390,000 surplus in the budget. These are all things I believe to be facts. So, just wanted to say that much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief. Any more discussion, Congressman Young?
Well, I just wanted to maybe ask if there was any other opinions on, I thought Congressman Walker or somebody has suggested maybe, well, if we don't want to give raises, we'll just hold spending to what it was last year. But we did a realigning of division realignments. So in some of the committees, we've had directors tell us, well, our salary was in a division last year and now we've moved it over to another division. So I don't know if we could accurately do that just by saying, okay, well, the Division of Health salaries last year was $2 million, so we're going to leave it at $2 million, because it may not have the same composition as it did last year. So we might if we do that, we might could cause some problems by doing that. My second thought is, I don't know I'm sure there's some of us that have certain individuals in mind that we're like, well, they don't need to get a raise, and I don't know who they are. But we did have a compensation analysis done a couple of years ago, and we appropriated, it may have been before I was on Congress, but well over $2 million was appropriated to give all the employees a bump in salary to get them up to what should be fair in this market. And here we are a year later, and they're saying, well, that wasn't accurate enough, I guess. And I'm thinking that next year we're supposed to have another survey done. So if they're not where they're supposed to be now, in another year, they're going to get that bump up in pay. So I think, to be fair to all employees, I don't support just hand-picking certain employees that should get a raise and should not get a raise. To me, that's not fair. Just to say, well, we've saved the nation X number of dollars by making cuts in certain divisions. Well, you may have done that, but we're still, until just now, we're still not even under our budget, our projected revenue. So maybe we made some cuts, but making cuts and then increasing spending and wages to me doesn't make a lot of sense. But I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Congressman. Congresswoman Buffalo.
Exactly. We spent $2 million. It was a year ago. It wasn't even 2 years ago. A year and a half maybe. And every market survey was done. We spent a lot of money doing this. Appropriated the money. Everyone in the entire nation was raised up to fair market value. There's not one, what that told us was there's not one person that works for the Osage Nation that's underpaid. Fair market value. Not only did we bring them to fair market value, these positions, we compared them to entities that aren't even government. We're government. We compared them to for-profit businesses, which was crazy, but it happened. So the salaries are pretty good, and we are supposed to have another survey done next year. So there's not one position that should be under fair market value. I have no idea why we're doing salary surveys every 3 years, moving people up in the beginning doing merit every single year and still doing almost what seems to me to be like a cost of living every single year. I thought we were supposed to get away from that. And if the executive branch says, we made a mistake while we were on Congress and voted for this, we don't think it works this way now that we're over here on the other side, fine, tell us that. Then let's do away with the merit every single year and doing the cost of living every 3 years. And go, or market value every 3 years, and go back to cost of living. Just communicate that to us. That's all I want. Because right now, we pay for one thing, and we're still doing the same thing that we were supposed to get away from by paying for the fair market value surveys. So, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I saw Assistant Chief Redcorn and then Congresswoman Pratt.
Well, I'm sure I'm bound to say something that's going to make somebody mad here sooner or later, but the fair market value, does the fair market value 3-year thing say that there shall be no raises to any department or anybody within those 3 years? Is that what the law says?
That is not what the law, can I respond? That is
Yes.
not what the law says. But the whole point, if you will agree, when we made that decision, when it was discussed, was that the administration at the time, and this body agreed, and you all sat with us on this body, was that you were getting away from the every year cost of living. That was the whole goal. Not to see increases every single year for cost of living. It was to go out, do a study, bring all of our employees up to where they needed to be so that we could be competitive, implement merit so that they would get some sort of increase in pay through the year for going above and beyond the job description, and that we would do a fair market every 3 years is what this body deemed necessary.
Well, from over there, let me tell you how it looks. From over there, the 3-year adjustment rate looks like a safety net to ensure that at least every 3 years that we're going to have an adjustment. And that at least every 3 years, everybody gets brought up to speed. But here's what you don't see when you sit over here. Let's say that we have some substandard person over here, or a person that we could probably do better in terms of qualification, position X in department Y. And they leave. And here comes somebody with a master's or a doctorate, and we need to do that. That very scenario that you just described prevents the executive branch from upgrading that unless we're taking money away from someone else's salary. I'm just thinking of reasons. We're the boots on the ground. We're the doers. In the everyday implementation of these laws, there are reasons for us to do that. I wish I'd have gone to the meeting. I thought it'd be best if I stayed out of it with HR. And let me make very clear that I don't think it's Congress's job to second guess every HR decision we make. Because we don't second guess every HR decision you make.
We're not doing that, Assistant Chief.
I didn't say you were. I said it's not fair if you do.
We aren't
If
doing
we
that.
do. Okay.
We're
Point
looking
taken.
at a big
Point
budget
taken.
and we're looking at the process
I understand.
that HR follows.
But we are co-equal branches of government.
Exactly, and we have the ability to question HR on their process and their policies, which is what that meeting was about. We weren't asking about individual jobs.
My understanding
ever.
is that you were asking questions and we thought it would be good for Congress to get the information.
That's why we set the meeting with HR, so we could get that information. Congresswoman Bucklow.
The scenario you just gave, I'm in agreement with that. You have an unfilled position, and the person that held that position previously had a bachelor's degree, and now you have someone with a PhD, and you want to move them from the lower end of the salary range within that bracket to mid-level, great. You get what you pay for. I'm a believer in that, and I'm a believer in paying people what the job is worth. But that is not what we're seeing, Assistant Chief. We're seeing positions getting raises that these people have been there for years. And all I'm saying is we started off with moving everyone up to fair market value. The whole thought was to get away from cost of living every year and implement merit. Now we see raises from people who got the cost of living increase a year and a half ago, got merit a year and a half ago, are going to be, their position's going to be evaluated next year for fair market value, and they're still getting a raise this year. That's what we're coming across. I'm not saying I'm not in agreement with you on what you just gave, but the facts are, that's not the only people getting raises.
Well, I would submit that if you're going to go down into that level of detail, that the Congress take the time to go budget by budget and department by department and make a judgment on whether that raise is valid or not valid. And if, I see the speaker shaking her head, if Congress doesn't believe that that's Congress's job, then in my opinion, there's a more strategic idea at place here. How much money do we have? How much do we want to pay for salaries? And that you make the decision at that level rather than way down here at this granular level where all of these judgments are being made. A lot of judgments are being made and expressed in this body about the competency of our own, of the executive branch's decisions. Make the decision strategically, or go ahead and go down here and make all of these other decisions based on your judgment of our performance. That's my suggestion to the Congress.
When we're in budgetary session and we go through budgetary review, which is how it's been handled since I've been on Congress, that's where we have our indicators. I don't believe it's this body, and I don't think that my colleagues believe that it's this body to say, no, this person can't get a raise, this position, let's talk about it. I don't believe that's what we do. We have seen the indication there that things are going on in the budgets that are questionable with salaries and raises. It's your job to give those, but we're seeing them. So that's why we are elevating ourselves and taking the view, because we are short. We aren't showing $300,000 to the good right now. So we're looking for ways to hold our spending levels within projected revenue. And I don't believe that we're doing the executive job. But when we look at budgets, those are individual budgets, and that's where we see them, Assistant Chief. So I don't think we're trying to do your job for you. I think we're reviewing how the money is. Congresswoman Buffalo Head.
Assistant Chief, we've had one director show up, 8 positions, 7 raises within. Did you get this worked through HR? Yes. HR said, no, I don't know anything about it. Then the director said, we did it on our own. We were told we did it on our own because they're not going to give us any raises. They're not taking care of my people. I'm going to take care of it. Every signature was on the bottom of that budget. So when y'all sit there and when you tell me we've made that determination, I can tell you with certainty that on one budget, you didn't make that determination. It was signed off on, but that director told us for a fact they put those raises, 7 out of 8 positions in there themselves. So
I'm going to let the Assistant Chief respond, and then I have Congresswoman Pratt after this response.
Use that information, make those decisions at that granular level, or make a strategic decision. One of the two. It sounds like you want to make it here. We're standing by the budget recently.
Congresswoman Pratt.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we're having this conversation because that is what we're seeing. And that particular director emailed me. I probably don't blame her because they emailed me after the fact. Because they can probably hear that we haven't done a thing about everybody else's raises. So I was like, okay, maybe I didn't go through our HR, but I went through now. So now they have gone through HR. So that's another one. And I believe Mr. Potts was at 140 something positions in fiscal year 2015, received raises, 100 and something. And then we've seen numerous throughout, and we're not finished yet. So that's why we're having this discussion.
Congressman Walker.
I just read through ONCA 1484. It is the bill that lays it all out. And it empowers the Human Resources Department to do a lot of things. I think we all need to read that, especially going forward throughout this session. And think it's also important to note that salaries and wages and fringe are the ones that always have a surplus at the end of the year. It's inevitable that there's going to be staff members or vacancies with staff. So if we want to make a reduction to the request, that would be a responsible way to do it. It would still enable the executive branch and human resources to give raises where appropriate in accordance with 1484.
I agree, and kind of to wrap this up, and there's a lot more discussion. The budget analyst is taking a review at looking at the division budget, trying to do the fairest comparison to what was spent in FY15 in comparison to 16, and I don't know that we have that information compiled just yet. I've been in meetings all morning, but he's going to make that, and as he makes that available, I'll have him distribute that to Congress when he gets some reports done from that, Congressman Shaw.
Well, part of the appropriation committee recommendations that directly impacted by our discussion, as you remember, the unknown piece was additional deficits in the budget to be addressed through reductions in new spending, so that we remain below the projected revenue of $43,755,000. And near the beginning of this session, our budget analyst submitted one of these submitted half dozen, but this particular one analyzed new spending requests by program and by line item. And if you were a member of a particular committee that reviewed the budgets related to that division appropriation bill, it gave you opportunities to see where can we make reductions in new spending. Really, if we make reductions in salaries and wages, our direct vote is not to vote no raises, it's to reduce the level available that could fund raises or other things, new positions. It's not really directly to say you can't give raises. It may limit the ability to give raises, but it doesn't say you can't give raises. And if there is a surplus every year, then it's potentially that some raises could still be given, but they may have to be more calculated than they are now, perhaps, or maybe they are, and they just will have to make decisions about whether certain raises can be given. But I recommend using this as a tool, because if not, we're looking at 5,000 and 10,000 here, and it's these big picture numbers that are going to get us to $500,000 plus. As far as Monday and 650 and 260 and so forth, I have no doubt that is a plan in the works, but we still have work to do in the meantime. We can't go into a dormant mode, betting on the come, to borrow Congressman Supernau's term. I think we need to use this as a tool to start instituting the measures to be taken against new spending so we can get below projected revenue.
Thank you, Congressman. Any more discussion? Congressman Walker.
Well, I would just point out that Congresswoman Pratt's motion involved two different discussions, and I think we've definitely had the first part of it.
I would agree. So is there any more discussion? I'll entertain a motion to come out of committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We are now back in motions and notices. Congressman Supernal.
Tomorrow, the LLC board is going to meet here over at the new office building. So all of these people will be here. So I want to make a motion that on tomorrow's agenda we put for consideration the Tallgrass Economic Development LLC Board appointees.
Okay.
And I'm going to list the names for the record.
Please, yes.
It'd be David Stewart, Philip Morrow, Raymond Hawkins, Tim Tallchief, and Jim Ferris. I'll make a motion we put them on tomorrow's agenda for confirmation, a vote on confirmation.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. We're still in motions and notices. Congressman Mason.
The education meeting scheduled today from 1 to 2 has been canceled.
Thank you. Congressman Walker.
Governmental Operations Committee meets today from 3 to 5.
Thank you. Congressman Shaw.
Health and Social Services will meet at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. Do you want to notice your meeting, Congressman Siegel?
Immediately following session, we're having an economic, commerce and economic development meeting.
Thank you. Any more motions or notices? Then we are at adjournment.
Motion to adjourn until tomorrow, 10 a.m.
The motion, is there a second for adjournment? Second?
Second.
Thank you, Congressman. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
We're adjourned until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.